This is a lesson on adding fractions with unlike denominators, and it goes along with lesson 8-5. Our objective today is you, the students, will be able to add and simplify fractions with unlike denominators, and we're going to be doing that by finding common denominators. All right, that's step 1. Step 2 is making equivalent fractions. Step 3 is adding, and then step last is always simplifying. And there's a lot of steps to that. Well, a lot of people say fractions are so hard. Really, the math involved in fractions, quite simple. It's the organization of everything that becomes hard. You know, what step to do, when, and where to write all the numbers. It gets kind of confusing. Those of you who practice doing the right thing over and over again will find fractions to be very, very simple. In order to succeed in this lesson, you're going to have to know the following. You're going to have to know how to simplify fractions, find the least common multiple, find equivalent fractions, and then convert improper fractions to mixed numbers. If you're at all unfamiliar or unclear with any of those skills, please review them before you continue with this lesson. Our vocabulary today: numerator, denominator, mixed number, and improper fraction. And when I say any of those terms, you should know exactly what I'm talking about. Our notes today are: what are the steps involved in adding fractions with unlike denominators? And again, we're taking these on note cards. So hole punch on the left, label on the right, and clearly writing what lesson this is from. Going to start off with an old familiar problem. We have 5 lions and 3 lambs, and how many does that equal if we add the lions and the lambs together? A lot of people say 8, and that's wrong, right? Because if you add lions and lambs together, the lions will just eat the lambs, right? Not a good idea. But the point is that when we add in math, you can't add things that are different. They have to be the same, right? You can't add tens and ones or hundreds and tenths together. They have to be added, or you have to add the same things together. So what do these lions and these lambs have in common? They're all animals, right? So that's what they have in common. So if we see them as animals, then we're just adding 5 animals and 3 animals, and that equals 8 animals. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today with fractions. Let's give you an example. We're going to add 1/6 and 1/8 together. You have to see these denominators as different, because they are different. And so we have to figure out, what do these two denominators, or the two things, have in common? And what they have in common is a number. And finding that number takes a little bit of practice, right? So we know that combining fraction pieces or things is only possible when the things are alike. So what is alike between a 6 and an 8? Well, we used to have these things called fact families, right? So we did things like 6 times 3 equals 18, and that became all the fact family, because 18 divided by 3 equals 6, or 18 divided by 6 equals 3, and that's one fact family. What we're looking for is something in the fact family with 6 and something with the fact family with 8. If they have the same number, then we have something we can use. But it becomes super hard. Whoops, I already did the 6, so let me erase that and do the 8. 8 times 5 equals 40. 40 divided by 5 equals 8, and so on. We can drive ourselves crazy with this. If we don't have a strategy, we're not going to get anywhere. So the strategy is we need to find common multiples of 6 and 8. All right, so that's common multiples, and finding the least one helps. So it's listing the multiples. We'll see if they have anything in common at that point. So the multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and so on. And then the multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, and there we have it, right? So what do they have in common? They have a least common multiple of 24. So move the 6 down, move the 8 down. If we had 1/6 and we're going to combine that with 1/8, we would use the least common multiple to convert each one of these fractions, right, to something that has a denominator of 24. Now, the least common multiple helps, right? Because in the end, we have to simplify. So finding something small at the beginning helps us at the end simplifying. But you would see that if we continued both of these lists, you would get to 48. They'd have that in common. They'd have 72 in common. And they'd have a whole bunch of things in common. Any of these numbers are going to work to add fractions as long as they share something in common. 24, 48, 72. You can use any of those as the new denominator. Using the least common multiple, though, helps in the end because then you don't have to simplify as much. Let's go on to the example problem. We have 3/8 plus 1/6. Hey, we already did the 8 and 6, so we already know that 24 is something they have in common, which is great. So 3/8 plus 1/6, writing the problem first, and then finding the multiples. So it's 8, 16, 24. I know we just did this, but I want your papers to look like my papers, so I'm not going to skip any steps here. 24 is what they have in common, and we're going to combine, or excuse me, we're going to change each one of these fractions to some kind of fraction with a denominator of 24. And the thing we have to see here is that this fraction is going to be converted separate from this fraction. So we got two conversions going on. The 3/8 is going to be converted to something with a denominator of 24. So we look at the denominators. 8 times 3 is 24. So we have to multiply times 3 in the numerator to keep an equivalent fraction. Now on the other fraction, we're going to use new numbers, right? 6 times 4 equals 24. And now 1 times 4 equals 4. Combining, now that we have common denominators, we can just combine the numerators. So 9 plus 4 equals 13, and that's over 24. And then the last step, simplifying. So we need to find out what are the factors. All right, so we found least common multiple over here, and now we find greatest common factor or common factors of 13 and 24 to simplify. All right, the common factors of, or the only factors of 13 are 1 times 13. And for 24, and we may have to do a factor tree here, that's 2 times 12. So 2 is one of the factors. And then 2 times 6, we got another 2. And then 2 times 3, we got a 2 and a 3 there. So what do they have in common? Nothing, except for that sneaky little 1 that's on every list. So that is in its simplest form because the greatest common factor is 1. All right, so what do we do? Number 1, we found the least common multiple of the denominators. Number 2, we converted each fraction to an equivalent fraction with that least common multiple being the new denominator. Then we added, all right, and then step last, simplify. And those are all the steps to adding fractions with unlike denominators. So if you haven't already got out a piece of graph paper, make sure you do so now. So here we are, 2/5 plus 1/2. And first step, finding the least common multiple of the denominators. So we'll find, I'm going to rewrite them, 2/5 plus 1/2. I know each one of these things is going to be converted to a new fraction, so what number are we going to be using for our new denominator? So listing the factors, you got 5, 10, 15, 20, and I don't think I need to go any further than that. For common, or excuse me, the multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, and I see where we're going here, 10. So our new denominator is going to be 10. Now converting each fraction, on the left side you have 5 times 2 is 10, so that top number must be multiplied by 2 as well. 2 times 2 equals 4. And then on the right side over here we have 1/2, so 2 times something equals 10, and that's 5. Multiply the same number by the numerator and get 1 times 5 is 5. So we're looking at now our new fractions are 4/10 over here and 5/10 over here. Combining them, 4 plus 5 equals 9, and now we're not doing fifths or halves anymore, it's tenths, 9/10, and I know that's in its simplest form because if the numerator is one less than the, or one number away from the denominator, it's in its simplest form. Second problem we have is guided practice 5/6 plus 1/4. So writing the fractions first, 5/6 plus 1/4. We know that the denominators are different, so we need to find out what do they have in common. And what they have in common is a multiple. So starting with the multiples of 6, you have 6, 12, 18, 24, and so on. And the multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12. Hey, look at that. There they are right there. So we find the common multiple, and we're going to use that common multiple to be the new denominator. So 1/4 is going to equal some fraction with a denominator of 12. 5/6 is going to equal some fraction with a denominator of 12. All right, and that is a times 2. 6 times 2 is 12. So multiplying the same number by the numerator to get our new numerator, that's 10/12. And then 4 times 3 is 12, so multiplying 1 times 3 is 3. So now that we have 12ths, we combine the numerators, which equals 13/12. All right, and that's an improper fraction, so it needs the next step in simplification, which is 13 divided by 12. Got a little space right here. 13 divided by 12, which equals 1, so that's going to be our whole number. And 1 times 12 is 12. Subtracting, we have 1 left over. We were dividing up 12ths. We had 13 of them. We used 12 to make the 1, and we have 1/12 left over, our remaining, and so that's our answer, 1 and 1/12. I know that's in its simplest form because the numerator is a 1. Our to-dos today, we're going to be working with the homework book H8-5, and we're going to do all the problems 1 through 12. Just remember, simplify at the end. Good luck.